Hi, my name is Ava, and this week I'm going to be talking about the Friends We Were on a Break debate. The main premise behind this debate is that Ross had slept with another woman the night that him and Rachel had broke up, and the whole argument from the fan base around it is kind of trying to decide if Ross was cheating or not, and if it was technically cheating. I think it is just a lot of poor communication and assumptions that ended them in this spot. To clarify the background of this, Rachel had started working with a new guy at work. His name was Mark, and Ross had got jealous over it because he thought that something was going on when nothing was. So he was sending big flowers and singing telegrams to her work to kind of show Mark that, she had somebody who was so great and so awesome and was doing all these great things for her and all that kind of stuff. Rachel really didn't like it because it was kind of embarrassing to her to have all these, big gestures thrown out in her place of work that she then had to kind of deal with. And Ross, again, took that as she's hiding something. Maybe hiding him, maybe hiding their relationship, whatever. So Ross was very insecure about it, and he was very intimidated in a way, and he kind of built that up until he started thinking that everything was about that. So Rachel had started working a little bit later, and he thought that it was about her or about Mark. And it gets to the point where Ross and Rachel were arguing in Rachel's apartment. And Ross said, "Is this about Mark?" And Rachel said, "Really?" And something along those lines. She had said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you think this was about him." And he says, "Oops, I guess it's not, sorry." And the funny thing about this is that they have a laugh track in the back, which I think if you really took the ideas of it and put it into something written where you can't really sense the tone with the laugh tracks in the back, it would be a very different argument. Anyways, so Ross and Rachel are arguing in the apartment, and Ross is very upset about it. And this is what leads to Rachel saying, maybe we should just take a break. Maybe we just need to, I think it was either later in the afternoon or late at night. So this was nearing the end of the day. And Rachel said, let's just, give it a break. We'll talk it out later. Let's just pause. And so they went their separate ways. Rachel stayed at her apartment, and Ross went out with his two friends, Chandler and Joey. And they went out, and this woman had kind of started hitting on Ross, and he kind of, pushed it away at first. He ends up calling Rachel and is like, "Hey, can we talk this out? Let's solve this. I want to work on it, and I want to fix everything." He hears Mark in the background of Rachel's phone. He gets upset and hangs up. There was nothing going on. He had stopped over for something unrelated. I think it was either work related or it was just she had a bad day and a friend came over. Nothing was going on. Even though I do understand where he's coming from, I probably would have been a little bit upset about that too, because it was the day they broke up. He was already at her house. So then Ross kind of takes this as a, I guess, well, you're going to, so I guess I will too. So he ends up and he sleeps with the girl. Then Rachel calls him back that night and says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I want to, work this out, call me back as soon as you can." He's occupied that night, and doesn't end up seeing the message until the next morning. So he wakes up, checks his machine, and sees that Rachel had left a message. And he's like, oh my gosh, she wants to get back together. So he's trying to rush this girl out of the apartment, and when he opens the door to let the girl out, Rachel is standing in the doorway, and she's like, hey, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that. She's taking a lot of accountability, and she's saying, I'm sorry, can we just get over it? I just want to get back together, let's just move on. And he's like, oh my gosh, yes, this is great, let's get back together. And the whole time, this girl is still in the apartment. So then he's freaking out, and he remembers that the guy that runs the coffee shop that they're always at had seen them together. He saw what happened with him and the other girl. So he runs down there, and he's like, please don't tell her, I really don't want her to know. We're just going to move past this. This guy, the coffee shop owner, he likes Rachel. So obviously he tells her, and he says, they do it off camera, so he doesn't say what he says. So then Ross says, oh my gosh, please don't tell her, we're just gonna move past this. And he says, oh, was I not supposed to tell her? And he turns around, and Rachel is sitting there staring back at him. I think one of the main arguments behind this is what starts the whole argument of, we were on a break, and it's not necessarily about if it was cheating or not. I think there was just a lot of miscommunication, because if it really was just about him being with that other girl without the fact that he thought that Rachel had already jumped in, which I guess he could maybe see that as getting back at her that he was trying to do. So it's pretty understandable why he would do that, I guess, because it was prompted by calling Rachel and having Mark there. So I think it's understandable why he necessarily did it, but it's still pretty disrespectful because Rachel had said that nothing was going on, and I think she was very open about that in the show. I think that there was just a lot of miscommunication and assumption in this show, or in this episode particularly, where they didn't really talk it out, and Ross was very insecure about their relationship and everything, and so he kind of freaked out a little bit. I think another one of the main arguments that people have is that he wasn't open about it. He went so far to hide it from her, which is something else that people really don't like, because he was really sneaky. He was hiding her behind the door, and he also brings up that if Rachel was with Mark, he would have forgiven her. Don't necessarily think that he would have, because that's still the whole argument about wow, it was the same day and you already jumped into that's very quick. So I think there was just a lot of miscommunication in the episode, and ultimately it just I think the debates in it were very serious topics that could have been talked about differently if there wasn't a laugh track in the back. And I also think that seeing all of the emotions was really interesting, because when Rachel had came back to him and said, let's get back together, she was very apologetic, and she was very sorry. And she took responsibility for things that weren't really hers to take responsibility of. And I think that is kind of the main issue. I think that Friends is a very good show. It's a very long show. My mom likes it a lot too. And I think that this argument is one of the main ones that people ever really think of because of the, iconic "we were on a break" scene. I think it's a very sad scene for Rachel, because, you wouldn't really know what to do after that, and I'm not really sure on the timeline of when they got back together after that. And then, essentially, I think the main argument about it isn't just that Ross had slept with someone else and, the whole, was it cheating, was it not cheating, he just misunderstood. I think it was mainly about the point that he tried to make, and also how sneaky he was, because he hid her in the room, and then he was, running to the coffee shop, and he was saying, like, just don't tell her, like, I'm not going to tell her, nobody's going to tell her, and I guess kind of just assuming that wouldn't get out. I think that the argument is a lot more than just like a simple did he cheat, did he not cheat, because he did it kind of to get back at Rachel, because he thought that she was already with Mark, which is difficult because I feel like there are so many parts of this debate and this argument that make me think, that might have been a little bit justified, because I might have done the same thing in his shoes, her shoes. Like, there's so many things that I feel switch about, because yes, I think maybe it was a little bit understandable why he would kind of try and sleep with that girl for revenge, because he thought that Rachel had already done it, and maybe, that made him feel like, oh, I'm getting revenge on her, made him feel better than, like, sad about, like, oh, she's already with this guy. But I do not believe that it was really good to rush into that, because it was only a couple hours later. And there was not really much else to understand. I think that Rachel, though, is in the right thinking about the whole we were on a break thing, because Ross believed that the break was a break up, and Rachel believed that a break was a pause on a relationship, essentially. This debate is a very interesting one, and I think that it was a very good topic for this week's speech. Thank you.